I'm Billy Ryan, and this is the No One Is Watching podcast, where we explore high-performing teams, individuals, and leaders, and dig deep to find out what makes them tick. This show highlights the DNA shared by elite performers, the process by which they leverage that talent, and ultimately helps you apply those lessons to your own life, business, or team.
The more I've read, the more I've heard, the more I love kind of the brand you've built and what you're all about. So I'd love to hear just a little bit of the origin story, man. Like how you came up and where the idea for Courageous came from.
Yeah. Also, two things before we jump in, right? One, let's give some love to Robert Kennedy, because he's the real deal. You talk about leadership. He was a leader before I knew what that word even meant. Like that's like for real. Like I met Robert Kennedy when I was probably 10 years old, 11 years old. And he saw something in me even then. I mean, I was just at summer camp, and he was the head honcho. So I know I want to make sure that we don't bury that lead for 45 minutes. That if he has to go,
yeah.
if he's got to go, at least in the first minute, he knows that he's loved and that we appreciate that, appreciate him. And then two, this is a little funny for you. So my partner in Courageous, who runs the knowledge side of our business, and I can explain what the heck that means. His name is Billy Collins. So every once in a while, I'll like see on my calendar Billy Ryan now, and I assume it's like, oh, Billy and I need to get like locked in on something. Not, oh wait, I'm talking about Billy Ryan in Florida. Not Billy Ryan. Billy and Ryan are having a conversation about our business.
There's not that many of us floating around, right? There's a lot of Wills and Bills and Williams and whatever. There's not too many of us still clinging to the Y. So I respect it.
I mean, you got that whole Ricky Bobby thing going. I can't possibly be the first one to like bring that up on the show, am I?
You never trust a man with two first names.
All right, let me actually get to your question. I promise we won't do this every time with the sidebar. You know, I am a happy accident. Not like I was an accident child, but like Courageous was like a wild accident. You know, I grew up in I think my 20s were in New York City, and got an opportunity to work at one of the larger ad agency networks back when advertising really mattered. And advertising still matters, but back then it was like the madman thing was real. Like my old bosses were madmen, and you know, you'd be sitting outside their office getting ready to present your ideas, and you didn't know if you were going to get the laugh or get laughed out of the room, right? You were going to learn fast. But you just didn't know in
what you were going to learn.
What's in a subjective world, like, am I getting laughed out, or am I going to get the laugh? And here we go. That was a great learning ground. It was a great starting point. It taught me the importance of telling a succinct story when we're living in this absurdly media obese world and we're being inundated in every direction. That's real, right? So when you're not there to defend your idea, nobody cares if you've worked on something for 4 hours, 40 hours, 100 hours. All they see is the finished product. That's real. So sorry, I don't know if you can hear the barking, and we're going to stay human today.
Show. We're all good.
All right, cool. So my only goal in New York, and I was we were about 700 people. Like my only goal in New York was to get into the creative department. I started on the business development side. It forced me to learn business, which now it was like the best thing that ever happened. At the time, I was mad. I was frustrated, you know, because you're like, I'm not getting my first choice here. What's going on? And looking back at it now, the best thing that ever happened was I went on the business development side, learned the business so I could speak fluent client. So by the time I moved into creative, which was probably 4 years in, then I was, okay, I can translate this into language that they're going to get. They're going to understand why we're doing the things that we're doing. And then it was 4 years of just going around making cool stuff that you saw on television. Some of it, you know, like Universal Studios launching the park. I know you're down there. I mean, Billy, I have this memory of before Islands of Adventure was launched, like our brief was to launch the park nationwide. And I came down and it gave me a hard hat. I think at the time, all we had saw were like the massive doors that you enter the park We're there, and like they give you this construction hard hat. I kid you not, Billy. The doors open up, and all that's there is like there's only just the water that's in the middle of. There's nothing's built except the water. Like that's how early we were in. You're like, why on earth am I wearing a construction hat? Like, what's falling on me? Water? A door? Anyway, so my only goal back at the time was to get into the creative department, and once we did that, then it's like, what's next? And, in 2004, I made the move west, thinking I was going to get to LA and take a cut at longer form story structure. So I had taken some classes on screenwriting in New York. That was the plan. After 9/11, which we were there for that, I was there for that. My best friend and his wife moved to San Diego. They're like, we're out of here. And I remember I was still working at the New York company, but I had a shoot in LA. I promised them I'd come visit them. And it was just one weekend where you came down here and you're like, oh my goodness, is this place real? I thought this was just a place you vacation. I didn't know you could actually live here. So just to speed up the story, I ended up moving here, and I was going to help my best friend's wife turn a photography studio into a branding firm and write movies on the side and be inspired by the beach and then go up to LA. The joke I make now is like, I came here to write movies, not live one. Like I never meant to be an entrepreneur. 1 month after being here, we ended up starting our first agency, creative agency. We did that out of her house. It was 4 of us. And then we grinded. And honestly, at this point, the irony as a television radio major, I have now lived business bingo. Like I've had to buy out a partner. I've been bought out. We've acquired a company. All the stuff that I never knew how to do, and I never got to LA. You know, that's the irony. Like we grew this thing from 4 people out of a house to around 90 people, and we kind of got to a place, Billy, where it was the first time. And by the way, like I make it sound flip. It probably took 7 years of grinding my face off to get a client on the roster that anyone had even heard of before, which is not a great sales pitch. Like, let me show you this amazing piece of creative for a company you've never heard of, right? Versus, finally getting there and growing. So we got into a place where for the first time, it's probably 2015 now, so it's 11 years, where we've got some size, but we're still small for the country. And great, we're big for San Diego, but small for everywhere else. I felt we were like in tennis no man's land, where we were still a really hard decision for a leader to go into their boss's office and say, I want to use this creative company in San Diego. So I was just trying to like make it easier. I believed in our product. I believed in like those stories we were telling for brands, but I just was trying to make it easier for a client to say yes. We had landed on the premise of courageous ideas are the only ones that matter. And the idea was, all right, why don't I do a lap around the country and interview leaders and be like, hey, you're a candidate for a Courage brand. Let me come interview you, see if you qualify for the book, right? And I'm like, I think let's see what happens. And my partners, I had 2 partners at the time now, and they're like, yes, go. So I get gifted this 1,000-day march to go interview. Like I didn't have it at the time. Now I say I interviewed the brave, the bullish, and the brainiac. And I got to sit with astronauts and tornado chasers and firefighters and Navy SEALs and people who were there on that day at 9/11. And then on the bullish side, leaders at Google and Apple, Alexa, Method, Harvard, just, like the ones that are making change. And then on the brainiac side, just people that study the way that we're wired. And from a courageous standpoint at the time, I don't think I realized it, but it's like, oh, why? We're pretty much outdated models still. We think we've evolved. It's like just because technology has evolved doesn't mean we've evolved. We're still pretty much cavemen and cavewomen. And when dopamine hits the wrong parts of us, we're in trouble. So as I'm sitting with these leaders, like the joke is on me. Like I think I'm writing this business development book, right? And I'm going to build some relationships and make them look good. And what became evident was, yes, courageous ideas are the only ones that matter, but courageous ideas die without courageous leaders. And if you don't have a courageous leader, like, it is a waste of time to put a courageous idea in front of an organization that is not ready to receive the medicine. And so, imagine my own internal dialogue where you're like, shit, I thought this was a business development, like a business card, not a business plan. And I realized that's what this is. Is like, this is much wider. Like, if I can help a leader, let's disagree. I mean, we're both in this space. It's very lonely to be a leader. Like, the higher up in the organization you get, for many, the more alone you feel. And just to put a story there, like, you could see it. Like, one moment you're besties with someone at your level that you're peers with, and then you get the job, which is the best case scenario usually. Right. And you were snickering at some other boss, and now you're and now that person reports to you, and it's just a little different. It's going to be a little weird, right? So, so that was the aha. I was like, wow, this is a bigger thing than just courageous ideas. This is about courageous leaders, helping them make their decisions. And so, imagine me coming out of this 1,000-day march of interviewing folks and realizing, okay, the company that I built, that organism, was built off different principles than what I just learned. And to be fair to all parties, I went in with the intention of it being a business development tool. And so at best, I felt half the org of my last company would have been like, yes, let's go. And the other half would be like, eye roll, business development tool. And I just thought I was going to kill this company if I try to implement what I've just learned here so went to my partners and said, good news is the book is done. The book's called Return on Courage. Bad news is I'm firing myself. And that was in 2017. I had owned a third of the company at the time and kept a stake in the company, but sold back. Tried to make it easy for them to buy me out. And in 2019, launched Courageous with Return on Courage, and it's been a wild experiment ever since. We now call ourselves a courage company. Usually my first question out of my mouth is, where do you need courage the most? From a leadership standpoint, is it a decision-making hiccup? Is it, have you created the conditions for a courageous conversation? Is it the team? Like, does the team need, do they have clarity on what type of team they are? Are they a group or a team? Learn from the Navy SEALs the differences between groups and teams. So, yeah, I could rant all day on the topic, but is this what you wanted? I mean,
no, I love it. The thing that I really love about this premise is that, and I would say this all the time in athletics, right? Particularly with young athletes. There's this young male athletes in particular, right? It's machismo, it's alpha, it's tough, and no, I'm not scared, right? There's no fear, right? Remember the old no fear t-shirts, right? Like, no fear.
Yes. And
I'm like, well, you can't have courage without fear. You need that. By definition, you have to be scared to be brave, and I think when you can tap into that, and there's a million different things we can be scared of, right? And we may not call it scared, but in reality, you are, right? It's that hesitation. I mean, a lot of people that listen to conversations like this probably aren't lacking motivation, right? They may be lacking the ability to jump when it's time, right? They may be hampered by that delay, that hesitation, that fear, however you want to sort of frame it. And I also agree that it's not for everybody. Leadership is not for everybody. A lot of people think they want to be leaders, and then they get there and they're like, wait a second, this is not what I thought it was. This is not fun,
You're touching on, you gave me a reminder of something I wanted to write about. I know we're both constantly in the writing mode, right? Whether it's newsletters, and I love the line, I write so I can think what I know, which is a great line, right? It's like helping me work through it. But but man, you're right. I love when I run into people that say fearless. or like fearless creative or fearless leadership. It's like, no, like actually fear more. Actually, like I'm in the fear more camp. Yeah, I'm not much of a FOMO guy. I'm a FOMF guy. Like I am a fear of missing fear guy. Like if you don't have a fear, you need to go find one and run at it. And again, I'm as human as the next person. It's not that I don't get scared, but you nailed it. Like there is no courage without fear. And I also think the irony is that courage remains a journey word. It's not a end game word, right? The end is probably, well, in business, it might be relevance, in life, it might be meaningful, right? You need to be courageous in the messy middle in order to get through something and to change, whatever that change might look like.
Well, it's growth, right? I mean, it's not something you acquire and then you just put it in your tool belt and you got it whenever you need it, right? And the other thing for me that fear shows is fear just shows that you care, right? I mean, if you don't care, yeah, no fear, don't worry about it, we're gonna be fine,
Right.
right? And it's this cavalier, and the other thing that can be misconstrued as courage, right? Courage doesn't mean taking some crazy risk and coming up with this really novel business plan or some like low probability, idea. That doesn't mean you're courageous just because you're doing that. It just might mean you're stupid or you got a crazy idea.
Right.
You know what I mean? Right. So the
courage
courage
trying out for an NFL team is not courageous, right? That's probably fairly reckless for me to go.
Reckless, yeah. Right.
I am declaring for the NFL draft, right?
Yes.
Like, I turned 50 this year. I'm pretty sure I'm not getting drafted, right?
How courageous of him. How courageous.
Wow, it's so courageous. Well, you bring up an interesting point. I mean, when we wrote Return on Courage, when I wrote Return on Courage, the initial intent was to just shut up and listen and be a detective and do the work and not have this be a soapbox book. So of how smart I am, that was literally go around and interview all these people. So the first 6 months was really just looking at this dictionary definition of courage, which is the ability to do something that frightens you. And I don't know, man, that just doesn't seem like something I would want to do in corporate America, right? And the data sort of backs it up that 95% of us are freeze or flight, right? And 5% of us are fighters. So I get the luxury of doing keynotes from time to time. And if I'm in a room of 100 people, or I'll have 5 people stand up just to show them, like, this is what the data says. Like, these 5 are your fighters and everybody else is afraid, right? And not do anything about it. So the first 6 months of the book, I was just looking at that definition, the ability to do something that frightens you. And I'm like, how does this help me? In some ways, you can make a case that for being in the courage business, our whole business is to make it as safe as possible for people to leap. Like, right. So our definition of courage now is knowledge plus faith plus action equals courage. And you need all 3 levers for it to be a courageous move. If you're missing one of those levers, it is something else. And just think about this in your own life. Like, let's say you're running a business and you're waiting for all the data to be collected. It's like, if you wait for 100% of the answer, I promise you're going to lose a lot of time. You're going to get past. And also your team is going to be like, make a decision, leader. So where is the line on how much knowledge you need? Because you do need knowledge. And then how does that actually build faith? Like, do you believe that this is possible? We talk about faith. We meet it more in the conviction and belief sense than a religious experience thing. And then how many times have you been in a business where you've known the right move and you felt it, and then there's no leap, there's no action? So if you remove one of these 3, right, knowledge and faith without action is paralysis. Faith and action without knowledge, Billy, is exactly what you earlier described. Like, that's reckless. Like, okay, hold on. We need some data before I go declare for the NFL draft here. And then knowledge and action without faith. If you're numb on the inside, I think that how you described fear earlier and you're just going through the motions. And we see this. You see people that have been at companies for 15 years, and it's like they've lost their mojo. Okay, that's okay, but that's just not courage. So knowledge and action without faith is safe. It's status quo. So that is the work that we do. It's the knowledge gathering, it's the faith building, and it's the action taking. It's the think, feel, and the do all together.
Yeah, it's funny. You think about, obviously distill things back down to athletics a lot of times, and especially with hitters in baseball, right? It's like, man, don't think too much, right? Just see ball, hit ball, and you don't over it's there's like, and you call it dumb, like he's a dumb hitter, right? He doesn't overthink it. He doesn't worry about mechanics. He feels a little bit, he makes a little bit of adjustment, but it's like, man, this guy's throwing this, I'm gonna try to hit it. And there's a lot of guys that get some pretty good traction and have some pretty good success with that approach. And then some of them, so that is operating without the knowledge, right? You're just seeing it and doing it. And then some of them, they get to a level, whether it's the major leagues or it's college or it's pro ball or whatever, and all of a sudden they are presented with this information and they are sort of forced to face the knowledge, whether it's statistics or it's advanced metrics or whatever it may be, bio markers. And then all of a sudden you see the brain start short circuiting a little bit, and it's like, uh-oh, right? Like, keep it away from this guy. This isn't going to work.
Yeah.
That's not him. And it's not a knock on him, right? He's just naturally gifted enough to do it. So don't muck up the gears with unnecessary data, but that again is not courage. It's something wonderful, and it's something different. But it's the same thing as the Peter Thiel, point he's made about his theory that there's a high prevalence of people on the spectrum that are successful startup founders, with the theory being that the things that you and I may get discouraged by on a day-to-day, right? That's a crazy idea. You don't have the funding. There's no market, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. They just tune it out, and they're like, well, it doesn't bother me. Yeah. I'm going, right? And they just go and they go and they go. And there's a lot of that to that, and that's not necessarily courage, right? That's another gift that you have that you can just sort of cut right through it. If you're not saddled by that fear, if we're using that as the definition, right? No fear, no courage.
For what I wonder, both on the dumb hitter and on this type of entrepreneur, look, when I think about no courage, it would be, wow, gifted, but never took his bat to the plate or her bat to the plate. So those 1,000 dumb at bats is still an aggregation of knowledge, right? For feel, right? There's still knowledge there, right? There's still, you're getting at bats, you're seeing, you're in the game, right? Or as Brene Brown would say, we're in the arena, right? So that probably goes back further than Brene at this point, but
yeah, I think Teddy Roosevelt.
Yeah. Right. So, but then on the entrepreneur commentary, one of my friends, I just had her on my podcast, name's Colette Carlson, and she takes a lot of stages. She lives like 10 minutes away. It's like one of my favorite coffee talks to have with her. And she has this line, clarity is a rarity. And so true, right? And I think a lot of our work, courageous as we've experimented, because that's what we are. We're now a 7-year experiment. And there's a coaching program that I don't even sell on the website because it's just a time suck. I'm just like, we haven't figured out yet how to automate it. But I know it works. Like, there's athletes who've gone through it. Like, people are reaching out. There's leaders who are going through it. Often it honestly starts now, Billy, like, I'll meet a leader. I'm like, humor me. Can I send you homework? And I share that because these leaders that are running brands, where they start, or businesses, if you want to look at it from a business standpoint, that's a brand guy. I'm going to always say brand. If you're a business, you're a brand. You're running a business. The business probably has values. Maybe the values are real. Maybe they're BS. Maybe they've been around 75 years. And you just don't know what to do because you think you're honoring the values, but they're not being operationalized. Okay, at best, they are being operationalized. You've got 3 values. Patagonia doesn't have a guessing game. Patagonia knows who they are. They have values. The values are real, and they use them right down to how they hire people. Like, good case study example. Okay, but you, the leader, haven't done the work to clarify your personal values. You think you know who you are. Well, I know who I am. It's like, okay, but have you actually put in the work to understand your personal values? You are a brand. You should get clear on who you are. Optimism is my number one core value. Creativity is 2. Courage is 3, and excellence is 4. What probably brings you and I together, Billy, more than any of it, is this unfortunate blessing curse of excellence, that whether you like it or not, you're wired to do more. Like, we both live kind of near beaches. Wouldn't it just be nice to be lazy and go to the beach? Like, it's not in your makeup. But most people, they've got the vibrations of who they are, but they haven't done the work to figure out, like, actually, what are your values? Well, you're the leader. You should know. And by the way, it doesn't have to honor or mirror exactly the corporate values, but you need to know, if you don't know what you stand for, you never know when to take a stand. So what I wonder on the entrepreneur side, those entrepreneurs that don't waver, that might be on the spectrum, they probably have enough clarity in who they are. Maybe they don't call them values, that they can, like, okay, this is important to me. I'm going to run at it. I'm going to be able to block out the rest.
Yeah, and I think that is probably more of a superpower now than it has ever been, because that ability to block out, or to view it as, this is who I am, this is my mission, this is what I'm going to do. Everything else is noise. There's so much noise now, right? I mean, if you're trying to get up and go to the grocery store on a Saturday, there's just stuff. You get distracted. You walk into a room and it's like, why did I come in here? It's like that is happening on I would say hourly basis, not even a daily basis. So that focus, and to use your word, clarity, is so hard to come by, and it becomes so much more influential and powerful because of that.
Hey, real quick, if you're getting value from the show, do me a favor. Hit that subscribe button, and if you're so inclined, go ahead and leave a 5-star review while you're at it. It helps more people like you find this podcast, and honestly, that simple form of support, it makes a difference. All right, back to the conversation.
This is my 3rd creative endeavor, and it's the first time I got the name right. Our first company that we started out of a house was called Fish Tank. I mean, I love the name. The idea was like, everywhere you go, there are fish tanks. You think you're watching them. Chinese restaurant, hotel lobby, college dorm room. Not that I was in a college dorm room in my 20s anymore or whatever it was. But like, oh, you think you're watching the fish tank? No, the tank is watching you, observing you as you are. I have to explain that story, right? IDEA was our second company. It was all about the idea. We had broken up the business into 2 sectors. There was the powerful ideas people and the powering ideas people. So the powerful ideas people were just thinking about ideas all day, and the powering ideas people, they're like, where should this live? And the idea was that both sides got better when they learned from each other. So it was more of an integrated IDEA. I still had to explain that to, like, we would still have companies that would come in and they were like, can you do performance marketing? It's like, that's not what we do. So here we are with the business called Courageous. What's nice about the name is it's a signal to the world who we're not for as much as who we are for. And so to your point, it is that, well, how do you break through the noise with the right people? And let's even call, like, why does this relationship work? Well, you're one of us, right? That's the beauty of it. It's like, we used to have a lion, not what a surprise. A Courage company would have a lion as a logo before we went to the lightning bolt. And the idea was, like, we got to put not our bat signal, but our cat signal out in the world to find our people. So I'm so grateful that Robert put us together, and I have no doubt that we're going to do more stuff in the future because you're already one of us. Like, that's the whole point.
Yeah, you can tell. I did this. I went through a similar exercise, not certainly as robust as you did, but it was more sort of self-exploration. When I was deciding I was going to get out of professional sports and figure out what I wanted to do with the rest of my life, just talk to as many people as I could. And with no ask, no agenda. I was still in the industry. I was still working in baseball, but I knew, like, the time was going to come. And inevitably, 10%, maybe less, of the people you talk to, there's just that connection, the synapses fire at the right time. And you're like, those are the only folks there's ever a second conversation with, and I subscribe to the same philosophy. Like, look, it's not for everybody. Elite organizations are not for everybody. Elite performers are not for everybody. Excellence is not for everybody. There's, we're in the NFL coaching cycle right now, right? And you see every other day that new guys getting fired and hired and whatever. And I just happened to catch a clip of one of the coaches in his introductory press conference, and he does it's the right thing to do. He thanks his wife. And as someone who had been on the other side of it, and obviously not as an NFL head coach, but in that pro sporting world, you realize the immense sacrifice. He told a story how he spoke to his wife on the way to a game and she was going into a labor. And then he found out after the game that she gave birth by herself. And there are people that wear that as a badge of honor, right? Because they're suffering for their craft and their calling. And I had that awakening. It's like, man, my kids and my wife, they don't care about baseball. Like they're not. That's my thing. Like I'm being selfish by doing that. And maybe 10 years from now, if my kids are super into baseball, they're like, Dad, why don't you have a cool job anymore? There's just so much that goes into that, where there's that intense commitment, there's that intense focus. But if you do it in the wrong environment or with the wrong people, it's just not for everybody. And you have to be willing to sort of sign up for the table stakes, whatever they may be for your particular field.
Well, we're talking about choices and we're talking about intentionality, and you just kind of you rumbled over. I'm kind of smiling here because you already rumbled over the number one value at Courageous. Now you've already heard just folks, my number one value, not Courageous's number one value, is optimism, which sounds absolutely deranged in this existing environment we're living here in a worry war.
We need it more now than ever. So
right.
Amen.
So that's a choice, right? And that's also the way I'm wired. But the word you use, right, was sacrifice. That is the number one value at Courageous. The number one we look at is helping clients make sacrifices, and words matter, right? So I think when people hear, wait a minute, your number one value is sacrifice. Yes. I'm not going to say the client's name. One of our favorite clients, though, we have a leader who feels like he's gone 15 rounds already, and then a new leader comes in at the top and unveils like 20 plus priorities on the year. And it's like 20 plus priorities. Like
it sounds like zero priorities to me.
Have we prioritized the priorities?
Right.
So sacrifice to us is real. Like you can't get to clarity without sacrifice. And then clarity is our second value at Courageous. Magic is 3, because most companies make you think, but they're not going to make you feel. And then ultimately we're probably getting brought in for some sort of shift. So change is 4. I also want to again, so I've thrown a lot at you. So anyone that's listening, I mean, look, if you're into this conversation at the 30-minute mark, obviously this is interesting stuff. Reach out and I will send you a values assessment for I'm not looking for anything. I just want to help people get clear. And also I'm human too. We talked about our writings. I write a weekly dose of courage that goes out every Thursday through ryanberman.com. And I remember, Billy, not this last year, but the year before, I remember feeling real burnt out, real tired. And I try to look at my personal values every year and be like, is this still me? Because we change.
Yeah,
right.
Sure.
And in the past, I remember having playfulness as a value, and I felt that was really selfish. And I moved it to optimism. And I'm like, oh yeah, that feels bigger to me. It feels there's still play in there. And, we've already talked about excellence, but I got to a point where I'm like, am I exhausting myself with excellence? And I started to crack it open. And I got to a place where I'm like, you know what? I think it's impact. And I remember like writing one of my weekly doses, and it's not a massive list, but like it's, you know, it goes out to 5,000 people every Thursday. And my mentor, I've got a few. One of them's named Steve Wilhite. Steve Wilhite was hired by Steve Jobs to run marketing at Apple. Okay, he is a tough SOB, but also just like talk about knowing who he is. Like Steve's not gonna waver. And it was like a tennis volley. It was like clink clink. Like I just put it out there, making this change, impact, and it was like bing, like right back, email, Steve Wilhite. I'm like, oh shit. Like what have I done? And he's like, they're your values and you can change them. But just know that Mussolini made impact. Hitler made impact. And I'm like, shit. Like, okay, all right. So I went back to excellence. And I think the lesson is it's okay to be wrong. Surround yourself with your people that are going to hold you accountable, right? That are going to make you better. This is not a solo mission. We all need our entourages. And I'm sort of back to what I said earlier. Like, if you are trying to do anything, you're going to run into fear. And the higher up you get, probably the more fear you're going to find. And the higher up you get, the more you're going to need that entourage. You're going to need your people that aren't just going to confirm what you think. That confirmation bias is real. So like, who is part of your tribe that is going to call you out on your shit, but also roots for you and wants you to succeed? And I do think we have a mentorship problem in this country. Like, I don't think there's
100%.
a good, like, we've got to figure this. It feels like a great business opportunity. Like, no one's doing it well. And if someone is, let me know, because it seems like a big miss.
Yeah, I agree. And I think a lot of that stems from, I had a conversation about this yesterday. We live in, unfortunately, what feels like such a transactional world where every exchange you're having with someone is, trading goods for services in some way, shape, or form. I have encountered people in my life that come at it from the totally different perspective. They're just giving. They're just giving with no ask in return. And then you meet the folks. It's funny to watch that person meet the average person who is just looking at them with the side eye, like, all right, well, what's the catch, right? They keep waiting. And 5 years later, the other shoe still hasn't dropped, right? There's been no ask. There's been no Ponzi scheme that's been unveiled, right? There's nothing going on. It's just someone who's giving. And I have, my wife and I are both guilty of this to a certain extent, her more than me, wanting to please people, right? You want, you don't want to piss people off unduly. But as I've gotten older, I've embraced the fact that I think one of my values that I embrace is authenticity. Like I am who I am, and that is not for everybody. And as we get older, we've had the conversations around that circle, that tribe. When you're 20s, you're friends with everybody. You got this big social circle, right? And part of it's life and marriage and kids and work and all this other stuff that shrinks that circle. Part of it for me has just been, I'm just more selective. I'm pickier. I'm more stubborn. I'm more well-formed. So I don't have the tolerance for the stuff that I once did. It doesn't mean I'm right. It's just, that's not the life that I want to live. Those aren't the people that I want to surround, because I'm a big believer in that, the energy transfer between human beings is real. And if you get yourself around the wrong people, even with the best of intentions, you're going to get some of that transferred and you may not want it.
I love and miss my New York City friends. You know what I mean? And we still have a chain. I have 4 or 5 chains that are going still. That I've got a camp chain. I've got my boys from college, my New York City crew. I got my West Coast crew, right? Like, just like a lot of people. And I think you're right. Like, am I really, really still like the guys that I kicked it with at Y2K? And if you don't know what Y2K is, just Google that. Right. Like, no, no, but I honor that time, right? I honor that time. And I also think that this is I once wrote this thing, and it was like an XY axis of on the X axis was disposable time, and the Y axis was disposable income. And yeah, in my 20s, when I had disposable time, but I had no income, right? I'm living paycheck to paycheck, and I'm loving life. No one's teaching me about wealth. That's not a word that's real, right? Like but I'm living. I'm having a blast in New York, living paycheck to paycheck with my crew, and the dividends are memories. That's still critical. But when you have disposable time and no disposable income, you can spend time thinking about shit that's out of your control or hanging out with your boys. And then when it's flipped, or you need disposable income, but you don't have disposable time, like as a dad with a 13-year-old and 10-year-old, or I'm living on planes, or right, we're doing all the things. There are times I'm like, wait, am I designing the life I want to live? Oh, wait, in order for me to live in an expensive place like San Diego, guess what? Like, what's the lesson I'm trying to teach my kids? That hard work pays off. So if dad's not here, it isn't because dad doesn't love you. It's actually the opposite. It's because dad loves you so much. So I'm trying to create a space where you could see like this is possible with hard work. Right. So I don't even have time like to consider going back to like, so I'll give you an example. All right. I'm going to do that. I wasn't planning on doing this. All right, we're going beanie. All right. So we're going beanie here. All right.
Okay.
All right. We're going beanie. So,
Okay.
so here we go. So I turned 50 on March 2nd. And you talk about gifts. I believe if you have a superpower and you can help somebody, you have to then make the choice if you want to charge someone for that or you want to give it to them. And there's been times in my life where I'm like, this is a gift. And one of the places where I feel like I've done my contribution to America is with Jalen Koff. Jalen is a aerial mogulist. She's a badass. This will be her third Olympics that she's going to. She's
I listen to your podcast with her.
All right, so you know, right? So
yeah.
So Jalen's a great example of, I met her before her last Olympics and we started helping her get clear. Now I don't know a lick about skiing and being an aerial mogulist and doing flips. I know flips in your head. And so she ended up going through the program, and what came out of it was the value of love, purpose, and grit. On the show, the one that led was just love. And I was kind of like, Jalen, come on, purpose and grit. Where's that? She's on a 100-day affirmation drip right now, where every morning she's getting something on love, something on purpose, something on grit. So and what came out of all that was her personal tagline, which is deliver the love. So every time she takes a mountain, the last thing I want her to think about is delivering the love. And she wants to love the race she puts down. Like is actually her enemy. As of 2 weeks ago, her family's like, Ryan, you need to be in Milan, like, or you need to be in Livigno in Italy. So I'm going. And talk about my wife. My wife's is so cool about it. I'm going solo. I'm going for 8 days. It's the first time that she'll have 2 events. And I'm staying with the family, and I'm not like, actually my job is to stay out of the way at this point, right? Like let her do her thing and be there to cheer her on. But it's exactly what I mean by like, here's someone that wants to be great, but also it's like, just go deliver the love, like go have a blast. You've earned the work. And now I have anxiety for going away for 8 days, right? And moving all the stuff off my business. But I have to go do it, and I got to do it for me too. So there you go. So this is her logo.
I love it. I mean, it's she's obviously incredibly talented, and there's so many talented people out there that, due to your earlier point, they just don't spend the time, or they don't have the roadmap, or and about a million reasons in between, to really lock in who they are, what they stand for, what's important to them. And that evolves, to your point, on the other point, like that evolves. I mean, I'm different from when I was 20. and what I thought was important is no longer important to me. That's all part of the process. But if you don't, I view this as organizationally too. You slap on the value mission, memos, and you can put the, cat hanging from a tree, hang in their posters in the break room, and, put it on a bumper sticker, right? And there's our culture. And it falls flat 99.99% of the time, and the ones that get it right, which is really hard to do because it takes a lot of thought and time and introspection and humility. It's usually universally applicable and yet still meaningful, right? You can't like take courage, right? Courage, great word. Everybody wants to be courageous, but that means 100 different things to 100 different people, and that's the point. If you just say we're gritty and we're hard charging and we're, whatever, pick your term. Like, okay, how does that apply to every person in your organization? And how do you expect them to live up to it? And it's the same thing with individual. You've got to know how you're going to go do what you got to do. Because if you do that, then everything else, every other decision outside that box becomes a no. And everything inside that box becomes a hell yes. It's just hard to get there.
Well, to keep this in the sports world, if you think about how much we practiced, and again, just to put this in perspective, there was nothing better than competing and playing. I grew up outside of DC, and so the weather just sort of dictated what season it was, because when December rolled around, I guess, indoor soccer became the lead versus, right, or you're playing basketball because you had to be inside. So the weather decided when it was time for me to pick up my baseball glove or when it was time to put on my soccer cleats. And my love was playing and practicing and competing, and I loved them both. And you think about work, and we're not practicing, right? You talk about sports. Like there's one of my favorite quotes to use. Is in sports, you practice 95% of the time. For the 5% you're on the field, but in business it's the opposite. It's like, right, you're handed a weapon for the wars of business. Your orientation was an hour and a half at best, right? And it's like, Here you go, good luck. And so any leader that's listening to this is the problem. Like, you are not practicing. Well, of course you're not going to be able to run the plays because you're so terrified and the clock is running. And sometimes it is, you got to go slow to go faster later. And that's what we've seen from great teams, is they're putting in the practice work. I actually wonder, and I think it's a benefit to our business because we do a lot of workshops, we do a lot of keynotes and a lot of offsites. It's like, I certainly didn't ask for a remote work culture, and I'm not totally, this is just me, like, I'm not sold on it. That might not be popular. Mm-hmm. If I'm 23 or 24, I'm like, what do you mean? I'm so much more productive. I don't have to sit in a car for an hour. It's like, yeah, but you're not colliding with leaders. Like, I'm worried for my 13-year-old son. Who's going to lead him when he's in the? It gets
back to your mentorship point. Right?
Yeah,
there is no. I completely agree. I mean, I've been remote for 5-6 years now, and there's a lot of things I love about it, but you do miss out on a lot. You miss out on that organic development. You miss out on the, people call it the water cooler talk, but you can really benefit from that beehive, that clubhouse environment. And I completely agree with you. And I actually wrote something a while back. I think it was like, everybody wants to, they have this paradigm of or this model of the leader they want to be, right? They want to be the whatever it is.
Yeah.
And it came to me like, I want to be the leader that I want my kids to work for someday, because there are so many people that I would not want them to work for, and it's a lot of it's just being a good human being and being a good person, but actually pouring into people and standing for something. And you bring it back.
I think we're less human. I think we're less human because of it. And by the way, we are all over, like, we're spread out. Courageous is spread out. We don't have an office, like, this is a problem for us too. Like, how are we going about, and I'm laughing because I think I wrote one of my weekly doses, and it was the last list you want to land on, which is you learn what to do by watching what not to do list.
Yep.
And like, is that list going away because
right.
I'm not watching?
That's a great point. That's a great point.
I'm in a Zoom square with you for 30 minutes, and then it's like, oh, we're out of time. I got to go to the next Zoom square. And we wonder why we have these transactional workforces.
Great point. Yeah.
Right? There lies the answer.
Well, there's the truth is hiding both positive and negative behind those squares, and when COVID first hit, one of the first realizations I had, truth be told, the first thought I had was, because I think I got an email from my college athletic program about canceling seasons. And I'm like, man, those poor kids, the seniors who just were busted their ass for 4 years and they just got their senior season ripped away from them. Right. The second thought I had, that a little bit down the road from there, was all of these charismatic, big personality, just kinetic kind of leaders that just walk in a room and it's just magnetic. They are completely neutralized in this world because you cannot do that in a Zoom square. And all of a sudden, the guy that I might be able to learn from just by hanging out and going grabbing lunch someday or happy hour drinks or whatever, now he's going to put 30 minutes on my calendar, and he's got to be very thoughtful and intentional about how we're going to use that time. That's way harder to do. It's more of a time suck. So I think some people have flourished in that environment and really it suits them. Others, I'm sure, have died on the vine because they just can't kick their feet up on a desk and lead by example.
Most terrifying words to hear back when you had an office was when someone would come to your door, assuming the door was open, and say, "Do you have a minute?"
Do you have a minute? Yeah.
Because you're like, oh shit, I'm about to lose 45 minutes of my life. Do you have a minute? You're like, well, okay, you come on in. In that moment, usually there's a collision of thoughts that happen in both directions. And almost every time, if it's done well, what comes out of it is something way greater. It's a multiplier. It's not even a 1+1 thing. That's gone away. Do you have a minute as a line, as an idea, is like, well, where did that go? Because if I'm in the office 2 days of the week and I'm in back-to-back 30-minute Zoom meetings, the good stuff is happening at the 29th minute. And then you're like, I got to run. I'm going to be late. And so who's losing? Right? When do you have a minute doesn't happen. It's, I love, I worry about that line, but like what's really losing is the idea. What's losing is innovation. What's losing is developing your people. Like we got to get our do you have a minute back. And I don't know if it's scheduling time on the calendar because we want to be so intentional that we don't like just allow conversations to go where they might go now. And you got to block off time and space for that to happen.
Yeah, I think you're right. We've overcompensated, and like the running joke now of those Zoom happy hours that were first going on, right when we were working, but you know what? And I used to make fun of them as much as anybody. But you think about it now, it's like, hey guys, we're going to turn the cameras on for 45 minutes, and we're just going to BS and we're going to whatever, and something positive is going to come from that, or something constructive. But it's wildly inefficient. But you have to supplement what used to exist that does not exist anymore.
And not everyone's gonna love it, to your point. Like if you've leveled the playing field, and now you've got your efficient operators are like, good, we're just talking about work, right?
Yeah.
And so your job as a leader sometimes is like, we have on our status calls, I have 2 status calls a week. Every single one of those, before we even start, I'm bringing a question. I'm like, highlight and hurdle of the weekend. Who wants to go first? And some people are like, we have status. We have to get through status. And I'm like, no. Oh, like we're going to stay human. We're going to stay human.
Yeah.
Right. Because without that, what do you have? Right. You need that stuff. So as leaders, you got to be you got to get it out of people now. You got to keep the human part and show that it matters.
Yeah. You got to force it. And the good ones can force it without it feeling like being forced. But
Yeah.
even there's a lot of thought and intention with it. And, I had the guy actually I had the last conversation I had on this podcast was with a friend who runs a company that he's got a strength and conditioning background, and his focus is on working with first responders. And I was like, first of all, I love this business idea. I love the ethos behind it, right? If you're not going to pour into those people who we literally all need to, hopefully never need them, but if we do need them, they better be optimized and ready to roll. What better sort of demographic to pour into? And he said one thing he tries to emphasize and instill in that group is like, from a training perspective, right? Which I think can apply to all the stuff we've talked about today, is you have to train every single day. Like tomorrow is the day that you get the call of your career, right? Where literally everything is on the line, including your life. It's one thing to know it's, hey, it's Thursday. I got a game on Sunday at 1 p.m. I got to get ready. I'm going to ramp up to it. So I'm going to be peaking right there then. It's another thing to get woken up at 4 a.m. and be like, it's go time now,
Yeah.
And like embracing that. I think all of us, getting it back to like the leadership perspective, like you got to train like you want to play. And it is a practice, right? It's mindfulness is a practice, and martial arts is a practice. And there's all these things that are practices, because it's not just showing up and doing it or reading it in a book. You got to work on it. It's a muscle.
Old coach used to say to me, practice doesn't make perfect. Perfect practice makes perfect.
Yeah.
I mean, and then I've, I'm sure you've had these chats too. One of my, I don't know if you remember the name, JP Blevins. JP played at Kentucky. He might have been like Mr. Kentucky, or maybe he was Mr. Indiana. I don't know. He went to play in Kentucky, and he's like, my dad was on me on practice at game speed always. Like, that's what it is. It's just, you got to practice. If you want to play at game speed, you got to practice at game speed. You can't just sort of laissez-faire it away. And so how are we doing that now as companies, right? It is about, this is why sports is so good. It can sound cold when you say things like Courage brands win, but like, that's kind of what it's still about. Winning. It's about helping the team put themselves in a position to be successful and win. What shift has to happen for us to win? Again, it's not cold and reckless. It's not leaving people behind, but it is framing like, okay, what does it take for us to have a winning recipe here as a company?
Yeah. And that introspection, I think, is important to that outcome. I had to go through that. Everybody has to go that evolution. You were an athlete growing up. You go through that. You're like, okay, that chapter of my life is closed. And I was blessed that I just parlayed my playing career into a sports career off the field. So my definition of winning more or less stayed the same for 30 something years, and then all of a sudden it's like, all right, now I got to redefine that for me first and foremost, because it's just not going to scratch that itch in the same way. So how do I feed that part of myself? How do I motivate myself? Everybody has to do that. So then you can say, all right, now I know what winning means. I know sort of what my choke points are, what I'm willing to do, what I'm not willing to do. Let's go.
Billy, when you think about your audience, what do you feel is like, what do they need right now? What do you think they need right now?
I think as it ties in specifically to the area that you focus your time on, I think that, and I want to answer your question, and then I'm going to give you the same question back at you, because as I imagine, as you went through writing that first book, talking to all these people, I've had a similar experience on this show, where it started out just talking to high performers, right? Obviously, with my background, a lot of them were sort of in that athletic realm. But then you start talking to folks in the military, you start talking to people in business, you start talking to people of all walks of life, and you realize that they are all wired the same way. It all manifests itself slightly differently, and it has different flavors to it, but they have the same fear that you and I have. But those elite performers, it just doesn't hijack their nervous system. It doesn't change the way they do it. They take it, they expect it. It gets back to practicing at play speed. They, that manufactured adversity, sometimes they seek that out. They seek out that discomfort because they know when it's go time, it's going to be uncomfortable. And so I think, to answer your question, I think people, if they can understand who they are, what they stand for, and they understand how far they're really willing to go. And I always just I don't stop on one question, right? There's going to be multiple follow-ups because everybody's got a good answer to that first question. By the time you get to the third or fourth layer down, it's like, well, maybe I haven't thought this through yet. And I'm just a huge believer that you have to really, this has to kind of hit the center bullseye for you for it to work. And then at that point, you kind of enter this flow state where, like, again, it's either like a hell yes or it's a no. And that's different for everybody. But everybody that I've talked to in these conversations, they've all had that in them, and they've had clarity around that, to use again that word again. Like, they've had clarity around what I'm about and why I'm here, and everything else is just kind of noise. So I want to hear your takeaways from talking to people, and you talked similar people from all walks of life. Like, what were the things that just jumped out at you? Like, oh my God, like this is bigger than, a business development tool. This is much more impactful.
Yeah, I think let's agree that it's not for everyone. It's not for most people. One of the ideas that we have, we call them, instead of a BHAG, big, hairy, audacious goal, it's our CHAG, our crazy, hairy, audacious goal. Probably should have been courageous, hairy, audacious goal, but I think we're trying to provide allyship and support for the 1% of people that want to choose courage. And that's 3.4 million Americans. And if we can start to congregate that group, then let them do the rest. We're not trying to bring everyone along, but if we can give them the tools that they need to be more brave. And it, again, like I said, sometimes it's giving them the clarity they need to lead, right? To know where to say no and where to say yes. And sometimes no is a super powerful word in business that doesn't get said, right?
Yep.
No.
Agreed.
Right. Here's why.
Yeah.
Right. Sometimes it's, like I said, everyone knows the conversation that needs to happen, but no one's created the condition for the conversation. I find that I'm 7 years in on this experiment, and I had to put an end to a book, but the book never ends. You're constantly learning. Rest in peace, Tony Hsieh, who was the founder of Zappos. Had a chance to have Tony on the podcast, and I remember his class. This is very Tony. There's always going to be something sideways with Tony. Like, he's like, if you, yes, but you have to come to Vegas and record it live. You can stay at our Airstreams, and there's like an alpaca walking around. I'm like, it's like Burning Man in Vegas is what it felt like. And so you're like, yeah, Tony Hsieh is giving us an hour of his time. We're going to go, let's go meet the alpaca. And you could, this is like one of the first podcasts I ever did. So it's recorded and you can listen to it. And he asked me, he's like, any chance you have the name of your book wrong? And you're like, okay, yeah, you have my attention, Mr. Hsieh. He's like, is it Return on Courage or is it Return on Curiosity? And I think there is a direct connect between finding a topic that you have to chew on and staying curious to follow the thread. And it becomes Matrix. It's like a red pill, blue pill, be careful, right?
Yeah.
And if you trust yourself, right? You trust yourself and you trust the topic, right? Better to stay a student on something you're passionate about. So for me, that is the courage arena. That is the fear arena. And again, Billy, there are times right now where I still have clients, we're still doing courageous ideas work for clients. I'm not okay letting that go. If that's what it takes is to show an organization what a courageous idea looks like, we One of the projects we're working with is one of the Caesars Entertainment brands. It's their Harrah's, Harrah's Resorts. There's 26 of them in the country. The one out here is on tribal land. It's 60 miles away from San Diego. And yes, they've got all the things you would find at a casino. Shock, right? There's
Yeah.
poker tables and blackjack and slots, and it looks like a casino and it walks like a casino. But they also have a lazy river. They have a swim up bar. They have an event center. Chris Rock's played there. They have all these other. You can get a great massage there. They got a spa there. I tell you can gamble on your phone, legally or illegally,
Yeah.
right? Like
Yeah.
because it's on tribal land, and we always called it a destination. We legally changed the name of Harrah's to Funner, California. It's now a legal city that you can Google Funner, California. And we hired a mayor because you can't have a city without a mayor. So we hired Mayor David Hasselhoff was the first mayor of Funner. You could look it up, and he was giving out keys to the city because it was on tribal land. We could legally do it. And so to me, what happened was we put that idea into the world, and then the culture came along, and we were able to hey, guess what, folks? If you work here, you're a citizen of Funner. What are the boroughs like in this city? Right? Hey, what tourists are coming to visit us? So it's now gone to the very top with the general manager and how we induct citizens into Funner. One of the things we're working on right now is a back of house is a state line. It's a mind state line that every time you cross the mind state line, you're ready to deliver on the premise of Funner, California. That is what we do. It's from the leader's lips through the culture to the outside world. That's what makes them different and unique. And that's what a courageous idea can do. I love that as much as still the leadership stuff. It's all the same to me.
Mm-hmm. I agree. And what I love about that is that I don't care what the idea is or the values are, the ethos, but as long as you stand for something, right? And
right.
If you are running Funner, California, and that is your brand, and that is your identity, and that is your ethos, you have a pretty good idea of the type of people you're looking to hire for that opening, right?
Correct.
And that, I think, is where we are really missing the mark. And I think it's probably going to go well down the rabbit hole on this one with AI and as much as it's being leveraged now, but you are just hiring skill sets, right? That you think you're finding on paper. You have no idea who this human being is at all. And I think that good organizations hire for character and train for skill to a degree, but you got to know what you're looking for. Do you want the competitive person? Do you want sort of that nurturer? Do you want the hard charging salespeople? What do you want and why do you want it? And if you can't ask that question, you're just throwing darts. So again, that's why I love Funner, California. Got it. I know.
Yeah.
Funny story about this. Much smaller scale. High school, they put a Trader Joe's in my town. And that was the big news. And so I went to try to get a job at Trader Joe's, and they were just I was pretty straight laced, clean cut kid, and they're like, I don't think this is gonna work. And I'm like, okay. They didn't say it like that, but years back, I look back and I'd go in there and shop, and I'm like, yeah, I don't fit this. This
isn't me.
It's not for me.
This isn't me.
That's fine. But that was my first taste of it. I'm like, hey, this is not what we are all about here.
It is. It's dating. It's you're trying to figure out, am I a good fit to date with this company? And it's they've got their profile called their website, and they're like, I think I know who they are. I think this is the one. It's no, you're like, this is not for me.
And then you show up on the date, and it doesn't look anything like the profile
picture.
Yeah. But man, this has been a lot of fun, and I'm grateful that you and I have collided. I think there's a lot of shared interests and passions, and I agree that I like the curiosity versus courage sort of conversation, because there are things I'm as guilty of this as anybody. If I'm not curious about it, if I'm not genuinely intrigued, I'm really bad at sort of digging in on it,
Yeah.
And so what I love about the work that I get to do now is I don't care about the industry. I don't care about what your title is. I don't care about any of that, right? I care about like helping you optimize what you do in your organization, how you do it. That I get a charge out of, right? So that's applicable everywhere. And in that sense, it's a blessing, right? And I can tell that you are similarly excited about the same thing. And so I think we're both fortunate in that regard. So I'm grateful that you and I have gotten to know each other a little bit and idea share on it.
Couldn't agree more. And again, I think the world needs more of this. And also, again, I always look at it as a data point, but if you're 70 minutes in on this conversation, folks, that says a lot about you, right? If you're still here listening, right, then you're probably in that same camp where nothing brings you more joy than getting curious on a topic and then gnawing at that bone and like see where it takes you and keep doing it. I'd rather always have that than not be in a quest for any answer, right? Like, which a lot of people are. And so keep doing the work you're doing, man. And I know it's only a matter of time when we'll find ourselves also in the same place.
I can't wait.
We'll keep jamming.
Yeah, man, absolutely. Well, thanks again, brother. I appreciate your time. And remind everybody where they can find you when they're looking for you.
Easiest place is ryanberman.com. Exactly how it sounds, RyanBerman. Find me on LinkedIn. That's another place. And then if you like the content, we do drip out a weekly dose of courage every Thursday. That's through ryanberman.com. We never sell. That's not what this is about. It's just like, and also we don't write books and newsletters. They're quick little hits, little weekly doses that may nudge or inspire, make you think. So find me and stay in touch. If you like the episode, reach out.
Yeah, absolutely. Everybody check it out. Ryan, I appreciate it, brother. Thanks, man.
You too, Billy. See you, buddy.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the No One Is Watching podcast. If you'd like to support the show, hit the subscribe button, leave a review, and share it with your friends. If you're interested in similar content focused on leadership, culture, and high performance, check out nooneiswatching.com. Your time is valuable, so I appreciate you spending some of it with me today. See you next time.